Malin, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Rebecca, I'm so fascinated by your bringing in the idea of complexity and saying that we need new responses to this complexity. So we have some slides about how complexity is driving us to beliefs. Could you say a few words about that?
Well, similar to the Mayans, when we get to a point where we can't discern the facts or the facts are not available to allow us to solve our most dangerous problems, then we have a tendency in all civilizations prior to collapse that we rely exclusively on unproven beliefs. Now, what are beliefs? I don't mean religious beliefs. When I talk about beliefs, I'm talking about anything that is unproven. So, for example, the idea that vaccines might cause autism.
Yep.
Or that climate change may not be real.
Yes.
Or is real. I mean, those might be considered beliefs. Until you can substantiate something, including putting your money in the bank. You put your money in the bank and you think that it'll be there when you want to take it out. You don't know it's going to be there, so you just have a belief that it's safe in the bank.
Yes.
So human beings need beliefs to function.
Yeah.
And this has always been true. Going back to earlier prehistoric times, we drew little idols on the cave walls to help us catch bigger prey or to make the females more fertile. So we find that human societies, during the periods of time when they're thriving and they're progressing the most, there's an accommodation for both the pursuit of knowledge and facts and beliefs.
Yes.
It's when we begin abandoning factual data and we begin relying completely on beliefs that public policy becomes irrational. And this is the beginning of the descent of civilizations.
So this is why you've got this provocative tagline, thinking our way out of extinction, because you're really seeing some signs, just like the Mayans went into fetish behavior in the face of the drought. You're seeing signs in our society that should really cause us to rethink what we're doing. I think we've got another slide that this is amazing thing that you said in your book. We live in a time with Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, but with godlike technology. And this is a dangerous situation. Professor E.O. Wilson of Harvard wrote the foreword to your book. Can you tell us a little bit about why he felt this is where we are and what you and he think we should be doing about it?
Well, for a long time now, Dr. Wilson and I have been concerned about the fact that there seems to be no connecting of the dots between man as a biological creature and the troubles that we're currently facing. We don't seem to want to accept that we're all trapped in a biological spacesuit that has limitations. We can't run a mile in 10 seconds. We can't lift 100,000 pounds over our heads. And the human brain can only evolve new features over many millions of years. And so when you begin outstripping what the human brain can do, you're going to have symptoms like gridlock and the inability to get to or process facts. And so increasingly human beings revert to beliefs, which makes them vulnerable to false prophets.
Yes, I think we've got a slide on that too.
For
Bernie
example,
Madoff.
Bernie Madoff. You hit the nail on the head. Bernie Madoff, you know, the people who invested with Bernie Madoff, they weren't people who had $50 in savings. These were very sophisticated investors. And they had been in the market a long time. But when nobody can explain derivatives, I don't think anybody in the world could explain that to me in a way that I could understand it. When you get someone that says, don't worry about it, I know how to make you money, it's very complicated. Just turn over the family jewels, and you have these sophisticated investors. What more proof do you need that it's become, the financial markets have become too complex for even sophisticated investors to be responsible for their own nest eggs, let alone you or me?
Yeah, but there was another factor, and this just came out this week with Bernie Madoff saying the banks and the investment banks were funneling money. They had to know that this was a fraud they were participating in, so that when people get to this dangerous situation of going after belief, There, in fact, are the con artists and the snake oil salesmen who jump on the bandwagon and push us for their own personal benefit.
Of course, and we are the willing participants in that because things are too complicated. I mean, even look at politics. These last midterm elections, I found myself standing in the voting booth, looking at all these ballot measures and realizing in a moment of absolute clarity and truth that I had not researched any of the issues on my own, and I was about ready to cast my vote based on lawn signs in my neighbor's yards that I tend to agree with, and 30-second commercials. Now, if I'm going to be that irrational, what kind of public policy am I going to wind up with?
My goodness. Marty.
Rebecca, you talk in your book about something that you call memes, which are kind of bad thinking habits that we keep on persisting in. Can you give an example of one such bad thinking habit that's hindering us from solving our problems?
Well, extreme economics is one example that I give in my book of a hindrance to progress in society. Right now, we are at a point in time where whether something makes money or pays for itself has become the ultimate litmus test as to whether it's valid. And this just simply isn't true. There are some things that will not fit ever into an economic model, and yet we're force-fitting it into some kind of economic model. For example, healthcare. We're trying to force that in, or protecting the environment and not devastating all the resources that we have. Clean water. How are we going to fit these things into an economic model? There are some things that are good for humankind that have nothing to do with whether they pay for themselves or they make money.
But can we get beyond economics? Because usually if somebody does useful work, they expect to be paid for it, and if they're not going to get paid for it, they probably won't do it unless they're working on a volunteer basis, and not that many people do that.
You know, there are millions of people that volunteer all over the planet. And when they volunteer, they are appealing effectively to the higher instruments of their genetic nature, which is altruism, compassion, to work collaboratively and not to compete for scarce resources. These we also inherited. But if you think about our evolutionary inheritance as one basket is our lower inheritance, greed, competitiveness, hoarding, cheating on our spouses.
So you're saying that people should place the well-being of the collective above their individual selves, and if so, how are you going to get people to do that?
I'm saying that that's in one basket, we have the higher instruments of our genetic inheritance, and we can appeal to that. That's why I wrote this book. We don't have to react. If you think about the human body, it doesn't just have predispositions for cancer and diabetes and heart disease, which we all accept. It also has predispositions for behavior. We're hardwired to behave in certain ways. We don't have to, we have free will, but to deny that we have a predisposition to fight people that have a foreign ideology or a culture when we feel threatened, it's just simply not true. It's how our ancestors survived. In natural selection, those who fought tribes with foreign ideologies and cultures, they were the genetic survivors. So we are flooded with chemicals in our bodies when we come across a foreign ideology. Now we can either react to those chemicals and pick a fight, or even worse, pick a war, or we can respond. We can think about it. We can call upon the higher instrument of our genetic inheritance, something other animals don't have and haven't perfected as the human has, which is our ability to preview, to look ahead, see the consequences of our actions, reverse engineer that consequence, and choose through free will not to react in a way that our ancestors did.
But isn't part of the problem that people have conflicting desires? They both want to possess the same object, for example, and it can't be divided in half. So the one that fights more aggressively will probably be the one that gets it, and they'll say, well, my aggressive strategy worked, it paid off, so I'll keep doing that. In other words, I don't know if people are thinking about the collective. They're thinking, what works for me? What's the best strategy for me to maximize my benefits?
But bear in mind, when when human tribes, when prehistoric tribes collaborated, when they cooperated, they caught bigger prey. They were able to fend off larger animals. They all did better when they collaborated and they cooperated. A single organism out in the wild has the least chance of surviving. It's when the group, the collective, work together that we have the best opportunity for survival and the highest opportunity for the propagation of our young and for progressing. We don't progress well when we compete individually.
Okay, Maylin, any questions?